Welcome to Corwin's Tech Tips. I'll try to keep it short. What I'm going to discuss here are guidelines on optimizing your operating system as well as hardware. Some of these processes can, if not performed correctly, cause damage to your system or to your hardware, so consider yourself warned. What I consider optimized is a system that performs better than stock, but not at its max theoretical performance. Maybe 90 or 95% of it, while usually consuming 30 to 40% less power while doing so. The reasons for this are that modern hardware is tuned way past its efficiency curve, and that it sometimes even loses performance due to thermal throttling. So, if you follow my guidelines, you will probably observe lower temperatures, lower power consumption, and higher performance with the same hardware. This certainly leads to a lower power bill, should lead to a more quiet running system as it doesn't need as much cooling, but could also increase your hardware's longevity if you don't plan to upgrade soon. As most modern hardware releases offer 5 to 10% performance increase per generation, you could easily gain those numbers without spending any money. In order to see the effectiveness of these changes on your system, I recommend these following pieces of software: Hardware Info, CPU-Z, Passmark Benchmark, MSI Afterburner, and OCCT. All of them are free, and I will link them in the video description. Before you do anything, you can run a benchmark with Passmark Benchmark and monitor the temperatures in the background with Hardware Info. Set it to sensors only on start if you want to get an accurate baseline of your PC's performance. And when you're done with some or all of the optimizations, you can run it again and see what and how much it changed. Let's begin. I'll split this into two parts. First, we have the operating system optimizations, and then we have hardware optimizations, further split into CPU, memory, and GPU. We'll go over the operating system optimizations first, and I only have two things to offer. For general system optimizations and debloating, you should use Christitus's tools. Linked in the video description, it offers many toggles for updates and background processes that can reduce telemetry, boot times, and can improve performance and responsiveness of the system. You can read all about it and how to use it on that same link. The second I recommend is setting Win32 priority separation in Registry Editor. This changes how your CPU behaves in demanding workloads and how it treats foreground compared to background applications. It can improve frame time stability and 1% lows in games, as well as slightly increase average FPS. All of it is application dependent, of course. I have put the location to it in the description of the video. I recommend changing it to 28 hexadecimal. Now, let's jump to the hardware side. First of all, we want to know what we're working with. For this, we can use CPU-Z. It's comprehensive enough for now. We open CPU-Z and look at what our processor is on the CPU tab, what our mainboard is on the mainboard tab, how much memory and its speed on the memory tab, individual properties of our RAM sticks on the SPD tab, our GPU on the graphics tab, as well as there being a bench tab, where we can, if we want, also run a benchmark to use as a baseline. Now that we know what we've got, let's jump into my guidelines. And this part will require a lot more work and research on your end, because not all components act the same. For example, Intel and AMD CPUs, AMD and NVIDIA GPUs. And also your hardware combination might not support or support some features because one of them is the limiting factor. So, for the CPU side of things, I recommend setting it up in such a way to reduce thermal and power consumption. You would usually achieve this by setting negative voltage offsets, but try not to set it below 1.2 volts CPU voltage under load, and perhaps even negative core clock offsets in order to increase stability and decrease power draw. The way I did it on my system was through the BIOS. As I have Ryzen 5800X, I set its PBO to -30 all-core, set its core offset to -50, and manually adjusted its PPT limit, or package power tracking limit, essentially its power consumption limit, to maximum 100 watts. Now my CPU never goes above 100 watts and rarely above 80 degrees centigrade when in its heaviest workloads, for example shader compilation, but performs around the same, if not better, than stock 5800X. Before I optimized it, it could consume up to 140 watts of power and would very easily reach 90 degrees centigrade and thermally throttle. So I'm consuming 40% less power for the same, if not better, performance. Doing this poorly can cause system instability, and maybe your PC could end up restarting or crashing during some important work, so you really need to Google your components and how other people have done it. And even then, you still need to test your system stability. You could do this with the OCCT linked below. On the memory side of things, we first take a look at what our memory modules are rated for on the SPD panel in CPU-Z. We're mainly looking at the frequency value in the timings table. The highest number there, in my case 1600 MHz, is the best and most performant that your RAM sticks are rated for. You can go through the slots if you have multiple or different modules installed. Now that we checked out the frequency values, we go back to the memory tab and check the DRAM frequency in the timings part. If it is equal to the maximum on the SPD page, great. It's already running well. But if the value is lower, then we should go into our BIOS and check out our XMP or EXPO memory profiles and find one corresponding to the higher frequency value. For example, 3200 MHz for DDR4 or 5600 MHz for DDR5. In the case of your hardware being unable to support those frequencies, your PC might reboot and your BIOS might reset to stock values. Your system could also prove unstable. So Googling and testing your components is also needed here. If you wanted to get even more out of your memory, you could try to read up on the link below in regards to DDR4 overclock. DDR5 is the same story, just different values. In which case you could and would manually in BIOS change the frequencies, timings and voltages of your RAM to its maximum stability in your system. It can gain a few extra % of performance at no additional cost if done correctly. Finally, when it comes to the GPU, I recommend tinkering with MSI Afterburner or your video driver's control panel in order to reduce its power limit or to undervolt it. This means your GPU would try to run at the same clocks at lower voltage, and if you mix in power limiting, you would only ensure it never goes above what you set. This leads to lower power consumption on average and lower temperatures. On screen here you can see my testing done on my RTX 3060 Ti and how it runs on stock settings, as well as my custom profiles. You can see that on average I am losing at most 10% of the performance, but I am consuming much less power and therefore my GPU heats up less. In conclusion, most of these, except for Windows 32 priority separation, are guidelines on what you can do to make your PC more optimized and therefore efficient. If you've got any questions about these guidelines that you couldn't find an answer to, feel free to ask in the comments and I will do my best to help. Until the next one.